I'm Taryn Lupo from TarynLupo.com, and stay with me, because I'm going to take you to the Mecca for classic arcade games located in Laconia, New Hampshire. FunSpot is recognized as the largest arcade in the world by the Guinness Book of World Records. It was started by Bob Lawton in 1952 as pretty much a mini golf course, and then it evolved over the years into two theme parks, one based on children's nursery rhymes and the other on an Indian village. It eventually evolved into a full-blown arcade where they preserved many of the original games. There's lots of the old history put all over the walls so you can get an idea how long this place has been around and everything they've done, including some pretty unorthodox stuff. There's just massive history all over this place, and it is actually a museum for classic arcade games, which I'm going to show you in a second. And FunSpot has a mascot that's a dragon named Top Snuff, which is actually the word FunSpot spelled backwards. Over the years, FunSpot has grown enormous. It also contains an indoor mini golf course, candlestick bowling. It has a restaurant, a tavern, but I was here for the classic arcade museum, where you can actually play real games that you won't find anywhere else. When you go up to the third floor where the classic video games are, it feels like you step back in time. There's music playing from the 70s and 80s, everything's all dim in the arcade, all the classic video game noises are going off, and you still use quarter tokens to pay for everything. Russian attack, one of my favorite. Chop, chop, chop. That's for Effie, he loves this game. The museum features video games mainly from 1970 all the way up till 1987. What happened in 87 was games changed a lot. They went from being fantasy, adventure, to more punching, kicking games, and that genre kind of dried up. So most hardcore gamers consider 1987 as the cutoff year for classic games. Oh my god, I played this when I was really young. I forgot about the Wizard of War. We had to pit stop and play a little air hockey to settle a grudge. But after that was done, we went up and started the classic games chronologically with Pong. Okay, it starts over. Alright, no start button on this, it just goes. Oh wait, what? There we go. Look at that. It's getting all serious now. This is really hard, by the way.
Oh my god!
Oh, that's so small. That even went on the top. I can't even return that.
What?
It went somewhere on the screen I can't return. All right.
Yeah,
here we go.
If you get it off the top, you're good to go. It's like you can't go all the way to the top.
Pong was arguably the first video arcade game, and very few people have actually played a working Pong machine. Most people had this on Atari or on a home console, but very few people ever played it in the arcade that are our age. It really was considered the game that kick-started video games.
Real sneaky. Seriously, place money in this, right?
There was also a Pong doubles game. So there was actually 4 paddles on the console and 4 people could play at once. It was kind of like doubles tennis. And this is an extremely rare machine. I've never actually seen one working. And in the 1970s and the early 80s, pinball machines were the rage. That's a really famous pinball machine.
That is.
The Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, come on.
I saw that. That was actually.
Oh, and of course the Kiss machine. Yeah, look at that. Awesome. The Black Knight. You remember that one?
Yeah. Black Knight. Cool looking machine.
After I played a game of pinball, we wandered over to the classic video games, and Kate jumped on her favorite. While Kate played the Galaga machines, I wandered over to see some of these classic games that I haven't seen in years. Pole Position was the first sit-down racing game I ever played. I really wanted to walk around the arcade and film games just like you would have gone looking back in the day. You had a couple quarters to spend, and you had to kind of guess what the game was about, and if it was hard or not, and if it was worth the investment. So for some of this mini documentary, I'm just going to walk through the arcade and let you listen to the noises and shop for games just like you did in the old days. And one of my favorite all-time games, Double Dragon, which I spent way too many quarters at Godfather's Pizza on. APB was my favorite driving game. Unfortunately, the screen was too dim to see on this very well, but it actually used to make fun of police officers while you drove around and collected donuts and went after bad guys. It was way ahead of its time.
I sure could use a donut.
So if you did too bad in the game or you were too corrupt, you actually got arrested yourself as a cop and thrown in the paddy wagon. You really did feel like you were in a 1980s video arcade, and there were so many games I had completely forgot existed. But as soon as I saw them, it brought back great memories. This place is huge too. It houses over 300 games on the floor at any one time, and they have about 100 in the warehouse that they bring out and rotate in. Let's go shop a few games and see if they're worth our quarters. Phoenix was one of my favorite Space Invader knockoffs. Kind of felt like Galaga and Space Invader combined. I wonder how many of y'all remember that one. And this was, of course, another. There was a whole realm of Space Invader-like games. And one of the major classics, Loadrunner, which I did not even know was in the arcade. I had only played this on the Commodore 64. How many of y'all remember playing this one? Here, take a look at, maybe this will remind you. They also had an original track and field game, which I had only ever played on Nintendo. I'd never seen it in an arcade. They also had every version of Pac-Man ever made, all together. Take a look. They also had Dark Adventure, which was basically an Indiana Jones ripoff. See the whip. They had a ton of the classics like Seawolf and Alien Syndrome, which was kind of like Smash TV. Pretty fun. Gunfight. Oh man, this is probably one game that everybody owned on Atari. I also am trying to show you all the artwork involved around the games. Like, seeing the original games brought back tons of memories, and all the original controllers, because a lot of times you only played this stuff on home game stations, like Mousetrap. That was an awesome game, but it pretty much you had to play it on ColecoVision. Look how original the controllers were back then too. Everything's all got pictures of a dog and different colors. The games were really artwork. It's funny seeing these games. I recognize them, and I kind of remember playing them as a kid. But I had just completely forgotten things like Domino Man. They also have all the Donkey Kong games, including Crazy Kong, which is kind of the non-US version of Donkey Kong. And this arcade is famous for being in the documentary The King of Kong, where you can see people compete for the world records of Donkey Kong, including the world-famous Billy Mitchell, who, by the way, my girlfriend has way too big of a crush on. For you young folks that don't know, Donkey Kong was a huge hit, and they made many versions of it. Then, I found one of my old favorites, Venture. Not very good on the graphics, but man, was it a lot of fun to play. Also, an Atari classic. And then I found my friends playing Rampage. Oh, yeah. Thought I'd find you. It's easy to get separated, because everybody has their own favorite games, but I eventually found my friends playing Smash TV. Big money, big prizes. I love it. Kate just won a fabulous VCR and a toaster. In this section, there were games that I had never heard of. They were all pretty much like Space Invader shootouts. Perhaps you recognize some of these titles. Then I finally came across Dragon's Lair, which was kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure, but video game style. Things would flash on the screen, and you would have to choose what you wanted to do in it. My favorite version of these games is something called Space Ace. I was really good at it as a kid, but I found out I'm not so good as an adult. I died first shot. Just like it's not. Alright. Maybe we shouldn't film this. It's not working.
Good.
Another game in this genre was Cliffhanger, which is more like a spy version. And it definitely had some anime feel to it when you played it. It was a really neat game, though.
Play this? Am I doing something? Should light up?
Yeah. It helps to see some of this. It's so dark. Body Blow. I remember that game.
The Ghostbusters. Oh, I need to cool down here.
I had no. I spent a lot of money on this game, Ghosts and Goblins.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, Congo Bongo!
That's Goblins with good music.
Right next to the original Space Invaders machine was everybody's favorite game that had a cheat code. So we actually tried it and actually had some success. Here we go. Here's Contra. Look at the dude zip their picture. That's hilarious. Got the 80s hair. Alright, for any of you nerds watching, right, it's down, up, down, left, right,
No!
right, AB start.
Down, left, right, yes, that's right.
Do it again. Get in here.
It would be...
I can't believe that cheat code actually works on the arcade version. I thought it was just the home console that did that. That was awesome. I found one of my all-time favorite games, Tron. And I actually tried to play it, but I couldn't film and play with just one hand. It was kind of hard. I made my way over to what's considered one of the hardest video games ever made, which is Missile Command. The old school Missile Command actually has 3 buttons and a rolling ball where you have to aim the missiles and keep up with which area of missiles relates to which button. It's a lot more hardcore than most of the asteroids or shooter games because you have to keep track of your missiles and count them as you fire them. Yeah, you see how they tell you when they're low? That's really hard. You No, I missed it. I caught up with Johnson at the Star Wars machine, which they actually have a stand-up and a sit-down version, which you'll see later. But check this out. I bet a few of you remember playing this.
Where's the music?
I remember this evolution, the skating game 720, where you basically had to spin a joystick around really fast and do tricks. It was the first skating game I ever played. Okay, I have a few tokens left. Let's go shop some games some more. Then I found Kate playing Black Widow. Really cool game that kind of got overlooked, where you're a spider and you're trying to protect your web, and other spiders are laying eggs, and you have to push them off before they hatch. Oh, here, I'll show you what it looks like.
You have to push eggs off the side, and then other stuff, you gotta click the money, because they eat. Apparently spiders like eating honey.
Video games based on movies were really hot, and one of my favorites was Krull. So I'll take you to myself playing Krull here. I gotta get it through here without getting crushed. Alright, got it. Do you remember the movie Krull? There were just so many games, and I tried to play everything, but of course you need days to do that. But maybe this one brings back memories. Body Blow, Body Blow.
I thought I saw it.
It even has the original control panel. Check it out. Now, there was a version of this, I remember, that actually had handles where you would punch. Some of these game titles I don't remember, and some I remember playing a lot. We played a lot of Commando. But others I'm not so familiar with. Maybe you recognize these. There were only a few 3-player games ever made. I can think of Rampage and especially this one, Super Sprint. Yeah. Dang
it. Dude, did I win?
My favorite shooter games from the 80s was Crossbow. This was really a hard game, especially since the crossbow really never shot where you pointed it. It was always seemed to be a little off. Ah, bullshit. fireballs always get you, man. They had the most tabletop games I've ever seen. And for you young folks, these were popular mainly at bars, restaurants. This is where you could sit down and have a drink and play a game. But they were always broken and out of order. I'm really surprised to see so many of them running and so many titles I've never even seen. We eventually worked our way over to the sit-down space games like Star Trek, Star Wars, and Buck Rogers. Oh, you still filming? Can't be that interesting to film.
Well, it's been a while since I played this.
What is that?
That was
What
a
is
short
that
film.
fireworks stuff?
Those are the
Missiles.
Those are missiles they're firing at you. Shoot them.
Shoot them.
Yeah, try it again. I'm sure you got a bunch of credits.
Oh yeah, I do.
Someone left 16 credits on here.
Wow.
Wait, what are these? Wait, I don't know what any of these controls do.
One is your lasers, and I think the other's a missile or something. Did I mention this place has a lot of sit-down driving games? Take your pick. Johnson also found a free game of Sega Outrun where the chair actually moves around as you drive. And back in 1986, when I used to go visit Myrtle Beach all the time, my brother put insane amounts of quarters into this game, and he eventually won it. Kung Fu Master. Now, FunSpot is huge, and we eventually started wandering out of the classic games section to the more new stuff. And some of these games up top were pretty fancy.
Oh yeah, I don't want to play that. That's way too far.
One of the things I had forgotten over the years was just how noisy arcades are, which is part of their greatness, really. I'll shut up and let you listen to the sounds for a minute.
Play again!
If you want to take a break from playing so many classic games, you can always do candlepin bowling, which they have indoors there. In the winter, it's too cold to play putt-putt golf, but you can play it inside here, where they have this mini golf course that has a bunch of historical places in New Hampshire. When the weather's good, you can even go to the outdoor ropes course. As you go down to the basement of this place, you'll see the real antique arcade games. They have a Shoot the Bear game, which are very, very rare these days. It's been beautifully restored. There's also some games where you play to get more tokens, and of course, the ticket games. And a lot of them are antiques, which are really great to see still up and running. Ticket games were kind of the original video games and are still one of the most profitable areas for a video arcade. And the arcade, of course, has vintage skee ball. One of the oldest and most original pieces in FunSpot is this boat that you can ride, and they had to restore that too. There's also a collection of antique rides for little kids, which, of course, attracted Kate to the rides.
Oh my god, merry-go-round.
today's high score.
Oh, look at that.
And for you diehards, of course they had Can Alley. And if your kids get tired of playing classic games that you think are awesome, you can always bring them up to the more high-tech games upstairs. Here's the reboot of Frogger. And if you want, you can finish off the day playing all 3 Mortal Kombats. But before we called it a day, we had to play one last game of Paperboy. Oh, the breakdancer! Don't hit the breakdancer!
I couldn't get around it.
I just loved FunSpot. I can't say enough good about it. It was just so fun to go back and do this running around with a fistful of tokens. If you loved old classic video games, you have to come to FunSpot. Treat it like Mecca. Come here once in your life just for the experience. It really was incredible, and I just can't even show you how much stuff's here. Every nook and cranny of this place has a classic video game hidden in it. You really need multiple days to come and explore and play everything you want to. So take a weekend trip out to Laconia and come visit FunSpot all weekend long. You won't be sorry. It was awesome. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel. Also, give this a thumbs up, a like, a share, or if you have something to add, remember to comment below. Thanks. Also, don't forget to stop by terranlupo.com. I have up videos that you can't see anywhere else. Currently, I have one on carnivorous plants and also how to make your own mead. All you have to do is go over and sign up at terranlupo.com, and all that's free.